भाई आपने रिसेंटली के जो भी इनिशिएटिव्स लिए SECP, उसकी एक रेजोनेंस में भी उस्मान ने अपनी टॉक में बोली कि एक दिन के अंदर कंपनी खुल जाती है आजकल, राइट? एवरीथिंग कैन बी डन. I read the report that you published for the last month in terms of the registrations that happened, and I was very happy to see that most of the registrations that happened last month in SECP, the new companies that were incorporated, they were done online and within a day, and most of them were IT companies and from Islamabad. So this means that there is a trend that's happening and it's good. But गुफ्तगू है लफ्ज़ sustainable digital transformation. दफातर के अंदर खुद भी आज भी फाइलें चलती हैं, दूसरी चीज़ें हो नहीं रही, and you as a regulator have to look after certain things at a different level, right? So how do you ensure that the companies which are coming into Pakistan, उनके लिए चाहे उनकी वो फाइलिंग्स हो, उनकी रिटर्न्स हो, उनकी ये registration processes हो, that is a sustainable transformation. I know it's all digital, but it's a sustainable one. So first, your comments on why, and then the future.
Thank you, Fasieh. I think just to give everyone the holistic perspective, like you mentioned, I think last month, and we see this trend, so the number of companies getting registered in Pakistan, so that's going, so that's increasing significantly. Uski do-teen wajah ho sakti hai. Ek wajah ye कि entrepreneurship is increasing in the country. The other thing is a lot of even today, millions of companies are undocumented, so they're coming in the formal number, etc. So we started this journey early last year, and with the, as you know, the government's big focus is on ease of doing business. And so Pakistan ki, if you see the ranking and Osman talked about, so a lot of these factors, this is one of the factors, right? So someone, foreign investor or a foreign company looking to come into Pakistan and expanding or starting operations. So, the ease of doing business ranking is one of the other indicators, but a very important indicator. And so the idea is to make things, simplify things, make it easier for companies to do business in Pakistan. So the most significant jump we got as a result of Pakistan's ranking really moved, was in starting a business, as you mentioned today. And the trend we're seeing is more and more companies are moving towards digitization, even in the corporate sector. And I would say, if I compare the last 6-8 months, I think COVID is again has been a big push, because there was a long period of time that we closed our physical offices, and business didn't stop. Companies continue to register, they continue to work with us, apply to us for approvals, etc. So I think for us, the idea is to really be the leader in it, and as well as show the industry as well. And you'll be surprised. So we've got if you go on our website, we've got an AI board, right? And you will see the general public, the citizens, really demanding more and more. So their expectations really in Pakistan is that you will digitize, you will continue to lead the way, and continue to improve things as well.
So I have to ask you another thing here. So you mentioned you have an AI bot, it's a very progressive leadership style, very participative, the one we will touch upon, the collaborative trait. Was it easy to implement in government, and what was the challenge?
So when I joined, and it's been 17 months exactly,
yeah.
So we did a first session in Islamabad.
Yeah.
And so the first thing which came, and we started talking to people in terms of getting feedback. So I think I would say it's a reflective of the organization's top management, the culture of the organization, the people who work in the organization. So when we went and started talking to people, generally, a lot of people said, and they said, can we Pakistan में regulator के साथ बात कर सकते हैं? It's an eye-opener. हम feedback दे सकते हैं, आपसे सवाल पूछ सकते हैं, because people here think you're a financial regulator, you will enforce your rate, etc. But the idea was to collaborate. So we talked about collaborative leadership, right? So not within the organization, across vertically, horizontally, as well as engaging the citizens and the public as well. And as a result, you will see our engagement not only with the NICs, with different sectors, mutual funds, insurance, the corporate sector, with the industry launching the sandbox, with the industry making all these changes with respect to startups, etc. So I think it's been a big key enabler for us as well. And I think in today's world where social media is very important part of everyone's life, so if you don't do that, it's very quick for people to also provide you that feedback. And I think it's an important element to understand, hear people the feedback, and we continue to take that and make changes. On the question of public sector, I personally would say that I underestimated the challenges when I joined the organization.
Don't we all?
So the challenges are enormous, but it is possible as long as you remain persistent. And it's also just, that consistent message, working with your colleagues, peers, the industry, trying to tell people why it's the right thing to do, and having that dialogue and engagement. So, I think that's helped a lot.
So evangelism is very important, right? And actually going to the masses, actually taking their support, their feedback. So really appreciate that input, which now brings me to you, Osman. You just recently joined, both of you have recently joined the organizations that you're representing here today in your professional capacity. So Pakistan Software Export Board, lots of challenges, I'm sure they're like any other institution in the government. So पहला सवाल तो मेरा ये होगा कि I recently actually read about what you shared in Australia, blockchain making way for actually the security trading part, for the commodity trading and everything. So certain challenges on that side as well, but first of all, your opinion, when you joined, and you recently joined, you must have come with some very high ambitions and all. Are those still intact, or are you embracing reality?
Oh, no. They not only they are intact, I think they are becoming a reality. मेरा जो एक मेरा छोटा सा vision था, I'll come to the blockchain part as well. So I've tried and kept my own career, resurrected it by delving into emerging technologies, and I thought there should be some people in the room जब हम बात कर रहे हैं multiple emerging technologies की और हम उनके confluence की बात कर रहे हैं. I thought to myself about 4 years ago, there should be a person in the room who should be able to talk all languages. We should be able to talk blockchain, we should be able to talk 5G, we should be able to talk IoT and a bit of cloud. I'm not smart enough to understand AI yet. And then I thought, okay, if we try and train, when I was coming to PSCB, I said, if we try and train most of our human resource into emerging tech, as well as what we do normally on ERP, CRP बनाते रहेंगे. But if we try and train most of our human resource into emerging tech, और emerging tech के confluence के ऊपर हम काम करें, regardless हमारी count छोटा होगा, हमारे numbers छोटे होंगे, लेकिन जो value हम table पे bring कर रहे हैं for the rest of the world, as HR, as companies, that would be immense. Nobody would be able to rule us out. Having said this, मैं पाकिस्तान आया तो मैंने आके यहाँ पे जब मैंने ब्लॉकचेन पे बात करना शुरू की, शुरू में a lot of people discouraged me. मैंने कहा कि वो ब्लॉकचेन बिटकॉइन तो नियरली हराम है. So, but then I went to really to the institutions. I went to State Bank. I went to SCCP. I was happily surprised. State Bank is working on many parallel domains on blockchain. वो कुछ चीज़ें मैं यहाँ पे बता नहीं सकता, बट लेकिन 8 या 9 ट्रैक्स पे ब्लॉकचेन के ऊपर, डॉक्यूमेंटेशन के ऊपर, सेटलमेंट के ऊपर, लेटर ऑफ क्रेडिट के ऊपर, there's been active work going on in State Bank. I heard, मैं सोच नहीं बताऊँगा, मुझे किसी ने बताया लेकिन SCCP में भी कुछ हो रहा है. तो ये काम पाकिस्तान में चल रहा है.
So मुझे अच्छा लग रहा है कि बातें सुन के कि ये सब कुछ पाकिस्तान में हो रहा है, और अभी थोड़ी देर पहले मैं आपसे जिक्र कर रहा था एक और दोस्त का भी. And so one of the jobs of a leader is that he has a vision, but then he's very focused on it. We saw Osman also saying that you're not in it for the short haul, you're in it for the long run, right? It's a marathon, it's not a sprint. So with the right people at the right job, things do happen. Which brings me to you, Ali. You recently took the reins, I believe just a few days back, of the KPIT board. KP is a very progressive province, but also lots of other challenges, culture-wise, language-wise, academia, industry collaborations, but huge opportunity. So what do you see as the first few bigger wins for you that you've identified? Ye maine abhi karna hai, and you, despite the challenges that you have.
Okay, thank you. It's just been 10 days since I took charge, so I've been catching up on a lot of things. And you're right that a lot of things have been happening in KP, and my predecessor, he's done a lot of things in the IT board over the last 4 years. So there is a lot to do, especially in, you mentioned, the topic of this panel discussion is also sustainable digital transformation and collaborative leadership. So regarding digital transformation, the two main areas where I want to focus on is digital governance and digital economy. A lot of things have happened already, and I want to build on that. So one major challenge that I would like to, so one drawback of working for the government is कि मैं बहुत खुल के बात नहीं कर सकता, ठीक है? So I'll only touch upon a few basic things. सबसे बड़ा challenge digital transformation में, चाहे वो एक company हो या government में, वो challenge और भी ज़्यादा pronounce हो जाता है, because if I'm leading the KPIT board, so मेरा जो mandate है, that is for the whole province, right? So I can do interventions in a lot of areas, लेकिन जो सबसे बड़ा challenge है, that is change management. जो mindset है, the people, that is the biggest challenge. और वो time के साथ, it's going to take time, but with the right kind of interventions, I hope that things are going to change, and a lot of things have changed actually. So what I have noticed is that government में जितने मेरे stakeholders के साथ meeting हुई है, so we have a lot of information systems. तो हर एक department जो है government का और उसके attached formations जो हैं, they've made their own individual efforts, but in silos, right? So integration is a big challenge. Okay? So we have more than 200 information systems which are not talking to one another. Data flows, standard format में data flows, not having a data strategy, not taking decisions based on data. Data-driven governance, ये सारी ऐसी चीज़ें हैं जो हम कर सकते हैं. It requires a big effort, but hopefully we'll get there with time. और digital economy में भी there a lot of things have been happening. सबसे एक major चीज़ जो है that is skills. देखें, KP में सबसे if you want somebody to be digitally skilled, सबसे पहले उसकी digital literacy होनी चाहिए. अगर digital लिटरेसी, अगर कोई डिजिटल लिटरेट तब होगा जब उसकी बेसिक लिटरेसी होगी. बेसिक लिटरेसी लेवल जो है उसके ऊपर भी काम हो रहा है. द एजुकेशन डिपार्टमेंट इज डूइंग अ लॉट इन दैट, और मेरे उनके साथ मीटिंग्स भी कुछ हुई हैं. सो वी ऑल्सो वांट टू do something about that and transform the education sector in KP, whether it's higher education or elementary and secondary education. और एक program जो अभी चल रहा है, we are going to scale it up, which I'm really proud of, is the early age programming initiative that was taken about 3 years ago. और उसमें हम government schools में we are teaching the curriculum of MIT Scratch program and Code.org का जो curriculum है, we've customized that, and we started it from 60 schools, government schools, and now we have scaled it up to 600 schools. We can keep the number of schools are about 34,000. So scaling it up to that level, it's going to require a lot of resources and a lot of effort. So there are so many things that I can talk about, but as we progress through this discussion, I'll tell more.
Thank you, Ali. Wish you good luck for all those great initiatives. Which brings me now to you, Fatima. You're not from the government, so you can, I believe, express more openly if you desire.
Absolutely.
and so, for those who don't know, Fatima was part of the core key team, the founding team of Kareem, and brought Kareem into Pakistan, many other places as well. And now she's doing the same, and rather has already achieved for Keep Trucking. She is also, it's also a very proud moment for us that a woman, a Pakistani woman, is leading such a large team of a unicorn co-founded by a Pakistani in the US. So lots of those check marks that Osman you earlier spoke of coming from this side. Digital transformation or sustainability, what is the core element that would keep any digital transformation sustainable? Public sector के examples बहुत सारी हैं, लेकिन उनके challenges भी बहुत, इतनी जल्दी overnight change नहीं आता. प्राइवेट सेक्टर के पास काफ़ी हद तक ये मसल है कि वो ओवरनाइट या बहुत जल्द चीज़ों को ट्रांसफॉर्म कर सकता है, और हमने ये देखा भी. कोविड एक्सेलरेटेड डिजिटलाइजेशन फॉर अस. लोग आजकल पूछते हैं कि who's behind your digitalization, your CIO, your CDO, or COVID, right? So many people are attributing it to that fact that this has happened. Primarily the private sector or the consumers also shifting. Why? So not why. What is it that would make it sustainable for the corporates, for the private sector?
It's a really loaded question. I also, just before I answer that question, I want to say that I moved to Pakistan last year for the first time in 17 years. And I moved here because I thought the talent was great. And sitting on this panel, I don't feel worthy enough because what you guys are talking about makes me feel like I made the right decision. And I hope like whatever you're talking about actually happens. So thank you very much for doing what you guys do. This is remarkable. My eyes have been opened. But apart from that, I think in the corporate sector, there's a few things that are must-haves for digital transformation to be sustainable. But before we talk about sustainable digital transformation, I think we need to discuss, and I was talking to you about this, about what digital transformation is. And I think a lot of people think that आपने app बना दिया है और आपने उसको company को ये कर दिया तो ये digital transformation. And then that actually is not digital transformation. For me, digital transformation takes into a lot of things. One of the things I talked about was change management. You can make digital things, but your customers, are they going to adopt that? So one sustainability is your country ready for sustainable development? And yes, you can talk about government, you can talk about your company, but if my mother still wants to pay cash when she's ordering something online as well, is it really digital transformation, or are we building that trust? But taking a step back, I think there's 4 things that I look at that are very important for digital transformation to be sustainable. One, buy-in from the customers. That's number 1, before you do anything. Number 2, buy-in from your own employees. So a lot of the time digital transformation happens as you progress. Or you start off as an MVP and then you transform, and uske liye you have to take steps, which means automating a lot of things. The third thing is obviously the country that you're in and the kind of people that are supporting your digital transformation and making it easy. And the fourth and the most important thing is somebody who thinks the core of digital transformation lies in processes. I think what we do is we make a company, a tech company, then we put 1,000 people on it, and they're doing manual work in the background to make sure that it's a digital company. That's not a digital company. You need to look at all your processes and like think of how can we automate them, and you should be doing it continuously. So 4 things: customers, employees, the government, and most importantly, and you ask the question, who brings in digital transformation? It's not the CEO, it's not the CIO, it's not COVID, I think it's the COO. So when you're looking for people, and when you're trying to build a team, please look for a COO. I'm always available, not really, that was a joke. But I think the CEO is the most important person in any organization. When I was young, they asked me, what do you want to be? I said COO. Because I think that the operation is what defines what your company, the direction your company is going to go in. And this is my personal opinion, no offense to any CEO sitting here, and then they automate the processes, and that makes it sustainable. And on the side, always have an R&D team, because if you're not thinking, somebody said here that you need to be thinking, sponsor, you need to be thinking forward. That's what your R&D team does. So you can make a product, it can be really good, but if you're not doing those 2 weekly sprints that most engineers and product team do, kudos to them, and they're not doing R&D, you're not going to be sustainable. That's just a word from the private sector, yeah.
Thank you, Fatima. So that was a very nice perspective into things, especially from the sustainability side. अब मैं सिर्फ एक छोटा सा question चाहूँगा, छोटा आंसर मिल जाए, and we move on to the collaborative leadership side. You mentioned, both of you, about change management. Change is always hard in the beginning, messy in the middle, glorious at the end, but it's a cycle. It has to repeat itself, which means it would be there all the time. And you mentioned the role of R&D and others. So I first asked this, change is always very difficult. आप भी एक गवर्नमेंट सेक्टर को चेंज करते हुए पूरे पाकिस्तान के कॉर्पोरेट्स को और ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस को चेंज करने जा रहे हैं एज अ रेगुलेटर, चाहे उसमें कंप्लायंस हो फॉर फाइलिंग एवरीथिंग ऑनलाइन, every document being online, no need to go to any notary public for all those things, and money flowing in from the valley or any other side with least amount of paperwork involved. All this requires a lot of change of humans' mindset, right? Not just the processes. What would be those 2 main areas that you believe are crucial for such level of change management? मैं 2 इसलिए कह रहा हूँ क्योंकि मैं सबसे opinion लेना चाहूँगा.
I think one, I would say it has to be driven from the top, very importantly. I would say the other is there has to be mechanism for acknowledging and recognizing people who drive positive change.
So very, very nice. So people who drive it and has to be driven from the top, so acknowledging their contribution as well, who are at the forefront in the trenches. Okay.
I think I completely agree. एक चीज़ और जो मैं ऐड करना चाहूँगा वो that would be how the customers are demanding it. So listening to them and then enabling the people who are driving it. ये दो चीज़ें important हैं. छोटा सा मैं एक example आपको दे देता हूँ. हमारे पाकिस्तान सॉफ्टवेयर एक्सपोर्ट बोर्ड, not that many people know it about it. जो हम कंपनीज जो पाकिस्तान से सॉफ्टवेयर एक्सपोर्ट करती हैं, हम उनको पेपर वर्क में कुछ हेल्प कर देते हैं, उनके कुछ फैसिलिटेशन दे देते हैं, गवर्नमेंट की कुछ पॉलिसीज उनके लिए आसानी हो जाती है. हमारे यहाँ डिपार्टमेंट है और जो हमारी वेबसाइट पे आप जाएँ और आप अपने आप को कंपनी को एज रजिस्टर करें एज ए सॉफ्टवेयर एक्सपोर्टर, तो वो एक ऐसा लंबा प्रोसेस है कि 2 मरतबा मैंने करने की कोशिश की, फिर मैंने छूट ली. और फिर मैंने अपनी वो टीम जो लोगों से ये सारा काम करवाती है, जो प्राइवेट कंपनीज को बताती है कि उन्होंने कैसे इसको अपलोड करना है, क्या करना है. मैंने एक दफ़ा उनको कहा कि यार ये 50 डॉक्यूमेंट्स जो तुम सारे मांगते हो, डॉक्यूमेंट्स मैं तुम्हें जमा करके देती हूँ, इनको अपलोड करो और पूरा प्रोसेस करो, अपनी एक कंपनी रजिस्टर कराओ. 45 मिनट लेटर आई लुक्ड इनटू द रूम अगेन, दे वर स्टिल एट इट. और उसके बाद आए कहते सर बड़ा मुश्किल काम है. मैंने कहा इसको काइंडली इसमें से जो अननीडेड अनवांटेड स्टेप्स हैं उसको कम करो एंड लेट्स ट्राई एंड मेक इट अ 15 मिनट्स प्रोसेस. तो ये छोटी छोटी चीज़ें अगर आप लोगों को इनेबल कर दें और उनको खुद यू मेक देम वॉक थ्रू इन दोज शूज ऑफ योर कस्टमर्स, ताकि उनको पता चले कि वो प्रोसेस बाहर से कैसा लगता है, जिस प्रोसेस को हम बड़े फखरिया अंदाज से करना है.
That's very nice. जी, आप ये दो वो मेन चीज़ें जो समझते हैं.
एक तो I completely agree, especially government में it cannot happen on this, it's a top down approach. उसके बगैर तो possible नहीं है. दूसरी चीज़ ये है कि it should be participative and inclusive, the whole process.
Right.
You have to clearly communicate the agenda of change. और लोगों को आपको बताना पड़ेगा कि आप किस लिए ये कर रहे हैं. They should know why this is happening. You have to take them out of their comfort zones, but if they realize that it's in their benefit in the long run, obviously the resistance to change may be a bit less. So ये चीज़ें हैं. Also there should be a mechanism of change management कि उसको आप measure कर सकें और monitor कर सकें. So there are different frameworks available, DICE framework, and there are so many other frameworks through which you can monitor the progress कि किस तरह over a period of time, whether you are making progress or not. So ये कुछ चीज़ें हैं.
So Fatima, communicate, empower, and lead by example are the common elements they have identified. What would you like to add to it? You have been part of various change management exercises.
So I think I agree with all of them, and mine would have just been communicate. And one of the things that I want to pick up was the top reason for me was, or the top thing you need to do is explain the why behind the change.
Yeah, very important.
If you can do that, but I would take it a step further and say what's worked for me in the past is once you've explained the why, be open to listen to the concerns, be open to listen to the feedback, and sit with them as long as needed. There was a session that we did at Kareem once which lasted 8 hours, non-stop, and thus the Sheikha had the patience to sit through it, where we were explaining a change and people had questions and we kept answering the questions. Because if you can't convince them and if you can't answer their concerns, और बाद में end में जाके ये हुआ था कि हमारी jobs करते होंगे. So have a reason as to if you're automating, if you're changing, you've thought this out and we thought this out. So I think listen to their concerns and address their concerns as you communicate. And there is nothing else for me. Yes, lead from the top is important, but for me that is the most important thing. And as somebody who's automated and changed a lot of processes, that's what I stick to. And as somebody who was part of the change, I had wished that they've explained the why a lot more. And I think in the government sector, it might not happen, but in the corporate sector as well, there's a lot of people that refuse to do it. So I'd encourage everyone to do it.
Excellent. It brings me to the last part of the conversation, the rise of collaborative leadership. So बहुत सारी दुनिया में बात भी हो रही है, लिखा भी जा रहा है कि not competition but collaboration is the key, right? And I was reading this article at HBR. जिसमें they write कि collaborative leadership requires 4 skills. I mean, primarily in these 4 areas. One was playing the role of a connector, a global connector. Attracting diverse talent, which is very important. मैं थोड़ा सा एक बात भी करूँगा before asking the question. And the third was modeling collaboration at the top. And the fourth was showing the strong hand to keep teams from getting mired in debates, which is also very important. These are the 4 areas. And while I was going through it, okay, what do they mean by diverse talent? So very अच्छी example, मैंने lots of examples पर इसमें ये लिखा था कि for instance, if you are working for a multinational and you don't converse well in English, there is high likelihood you will not be promoted as easily as those who converse well, because you will never be identified by the senior management. So many multinationals, as part of their collaborative leaderships, encourage people to speak different languages in their meetings and their board meetings, so that their cultural background is not a barrier and they bring in more diverse ideas. So the ability to bring together people from different backgrounds, disciplines, cultures, generations, and leveraging all they have to offer is a must-have for contemporary collaborative leaders. Yet many companies spend inordinate amounts of time, money and energy attracting talented employees. I believe we all have been victim of this, only to subject them to homogenizing the processes that kill the creativity. So वो उसी इसका culture का आगे हिस्सा बन जाते हैं जब कहते हैं culture fit है या नहीं है. So and this and one example I shared with you. So this speaks a lot for the public sector because it's even more difficult. Your thoughts on this? Where do you see the collaborative leadership? And if you see it in the government right now, and I'm not going to be asking only for SCCP, what do you think needs to be done while there are many other challenges within the government? कि आपने talent कैसे diverse रखें?
I think I'll just first touch on diversity, right? So I think the way we are trying to change it, so we just inducted about 30 people as management trainees from all over the country. I think about 65% are females.
Very nice.
So we spent a lot of time designing the program in a way that it represents all provinces. It includes, to the extent possible, all the languages people speak in Pakistan, and is a true representation of the country. And the idea is, and you know, they were paid, or the incentive program is as good as a private sector entity.
Excellent.
And the idea is that if we are able to retain them for the next 10 to 15 years, they will grow to become leaders across the organization. And that's how the change will come in the public sector entity. So there's a huge focus, and I think that's that's consciously done to bring that diversity, the one you mentioned, and encouraging different people who speak different languages, come from different backgrounds. I think in terms of collaborative leadership, so I'll just give an example of Osman. I think came, I don't know who told Osman about blockchain, but he came to see me I think last week, and we discussed, and you know, the overall theme was how do we increase the investment, IT investment in Pakistan, and how do we encourage IT exports. And we talked about some random ideas, some high-level brainstorm about things. We talked about certain challenges which exist from a legal perspective. But at the end of we spent I think about a couple of hours. But we discussed and agreed on some action points, and we said we work towards on it, which serves the overall, which serves Osman's perspective from being in PSEB, serves Pakistan's economic perspective. And so we discussed and brainstormed. So I think more and more what is important to understand is, and I think also not just with the public sector, but also the private sector. So as individuals, as leaders, people who, for example, present here, people we know each other, how do we leverage this? It doesn't take too much effort. So we work with LICs.
Yeah.
So for example, I called the CEO of a public sector entity last week, and I told him this is an idea. I think if we work collaboratively and work together on it, it will help the overall country. And he said, why not? Let's get on a call and discuss. So I think more and more, it's not that difficult to do. I think it's just more of that perception in our mind that it is difficult to do, but it is possible. So I think, and the same I see at people at the top as well. And if you reach out to people and ask them and show them or tell them how you can collaborate to work together on a certain initiative, I think there's a lot of benefits to reap. And so it could be FER, the state bank, we work together with some of the provincial boards in the country as well. So I think, so personally, I try to do that as well. And I've seen more and more people in public sector doing that as well. I think we can do much more, both at an organization level and as well as at an individual level.
Thank you. Thank you, Abdul. So, Ali, पहले मैं आपसे एक question करूँगा because आपने जो touch किया collaboration on the external side, right? So, enabling different organizations, whether with an allied or aligned business interest or not, but to collaborate to help someone else, right, is very important and genuine. Sometimes driven by an individual. लेकिन एक internal भी collaborative leadership की बहुत बड़ा role है, जिसमें अब आप top centric से team centric के approach पे चले जाते हैं, कि instead of only having your key managers or directors at a strategy meeting, you involve people from all cadres because everyone as an individual is contributing to the common goal of the organization. So, how do you see that as a challenge, especially from public sector? क्योंकि normally आप देखते हैं कि जो junior level का staff होता है, वो कभी किसी ऐसी senior meeting का हिस्सा ही नहीं बनता, या contribute ही नहीं कर पाता, और उनके पास भी genuine ideas होते हैं, क्योंकि वो भी at the other end एक beneficiary है उसी service की जो government दे रही है या automate करने जा रही है. So, how would you intend to solve it and your take on it?
You see, when you look internally into your organization, the good thing is that So the good thing is that you have enough authority to exercise to usually mitigate the circumstances that usually impede progress. और उसमें आप काफ़ी काम कर सकते हैं. For example, you mentioned कि जितने भी हमारे lower tier में भी जितने हमारे employees हैं उनको हम include करें discussions में, strategy में, take their input. So what we do, what I have done is कि मेरे जितने top tier और middle tier के management है, I involve them in strategy related discussions. और फिर वो क्या करते हैं कि वो अपनी टीम को involve करते हैं, they take their input and then they report back to me. Because there is you can't engage with everybody in the organization because of your workload and everything. So that's what I do, and I mean it's just been 10 days. But in my previous organization, I used to do the same, and it has, I mean, so far given good results. So I intend to do the same here. अभी तक 10 दिन हुए, but सिर्फ एक ही strategy की meeting हुई है, we managed to do that. Externally, अगर आप देखें, you have to do a lot of expectation management. That can become very difficult at times and challenging at times, क्योंकि मुख्तलिफ levels पे आपसे अक्सर different expectations की जाती हैं. For example, I've been told that you're not supposed to do everything yourself. एक और province की example देते थे, because you have to involve the private sector. And then at one end, I'm expected to do the opposite, right? So there you have to do a lot of expectation management. बाकी एक टैलेंट की मैं बात करना चाहूँगा. गवर्नमेंट ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस में इट कैन बिकम चैलेंजिंग, क्योंकि आपके जो पे स्केल्स होते हैं और आपका जो स्ट्रक्चर होता है, यूजुअली इट्स नॉट इनफ फॉर द बेस्ट टैलेंट दैट इज आउट देयर इन द मार्केट, एंड इट्स डिफिकल्ट टू मैच द पे स्केल्स एंड द इंसेंटिव स्ट्रक्चर ऑफ द प्राइवेट सेक्टर. So that's why about I think 4 years ago I was the board member of IT board, and what I did was that I restructured everything, the whole organizational structure, and we also revised the pay scales, and we tried to get the best talent from the market. Obviously we faced a lot of resistance also, लेकिन अगर आपके पास एक अच्छी टीम नहीं है, आपके पास एक अच्छा टैलेंट नहीं है, you don't have a good team, you see it's directly अच्छी टीम और successful delivery, there is a very strong correlation. तो वो आपको चाहिए होती है. बाकी जितने भी और स्टेक होल्डर्स हैं, फॉर एग्जाम्पल आई हैड अ वेरी गुड मीटिंग विद MDB sir about 10 days ago. That was my first meeting with him, and we are in the process of signing an MOU, and I've also interacted with Punjab IT board. वो थोड़ा सा interaction पहले बहुत कम होता था. I'll tell you something very interesting. ये काफ़ी पुरानी बात हो गई है, so now I can disclose that. मैं जब मेरा दूसरा दिन था वाले पर, after I took charge as the MD IT board, मुझे एक दो बंदों ने आके बताया कि थोड़ा सा एहतियात करें क्योंकि हमारा एक बुरा एक्सपीरियंस हो चुका है पहले. तो मैंने उनसे पूछा कि क्या हुआ. उन्होंने मुझे बताया कि that was I think way back in 2013 or 14. कहते हैं हम सोच रहे थे कि हम पंजाब IT बोर्ड के साथ जाके एक मीटिंग करें, वी कैन डिस्कस डिफरेंट एवेन्यूज ऑफ कोलैबोरेशन और एक पॉजिटिव स्पिरिट में हम जाके. सो अ डेलीगेशन वेंट फ्रॉम KP, एक मीटिंग हुई वहाँ पे, और वो कह रहे थे हम ऑफिस से अभी बाहर निकले ही नहीं थे कि हमें KP गवर्नमेंट से कॉलें आनी शुरू हो गई और हमारी एक्सप्लेनेशन कॉल हो गई. पूछा हुआ क्या है. उन्होंने कहा आपने ट्विटर चेक किया पंजाब IT बोर्ड का. उन्होंने कहा नहीं. कहते हमने चेक किया तो उसमें लिखा हुआ था कि KP का डेलीगेशन आया था और पंजाब IT बोर्ड जो है इट्स गोइंग टू हेल्प देम, they gave the impression कि so that is what was the kind of message that was provided. So I'm completely I believe in collaboration, और मैं already मैंने उनको कहा कि नहीं यार, we have to move forward with a positive spirit of collaboration. हम सब इस मुल्क के लिए काम कर रहे हैं. So we can learn from their good projects, they can benefit from the good initiatives that we've taken. So with collaborating with all of the stakeholders, we can do a lot more than what we individually can.
I agree, and by the way, for full disclosure, guilty as charged, I was part of that meeting. I was sitting in that very room. और अभी हम आपके डेलीगेशन को नीचे अल्फा टावर के छोड़ के ही आए थे कि हमने भी अपने ट्विटर पे टन 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 सुनी और वही देखा जो आपने देखा और सुना. So yeah, I believe maturity and the approach and the vision to think big and beyond yourself comes with experiences, and also the fruitful reward of such collaboration. Usman, दो लोग तो सरकार में ऑलरेडी इस बात को वैलिडेट कर चुके हैं कि आपसे मुलाकात हुई है. ठीक है, सो मेरे ख्याल में एक्सटर्नल वाली साइड पे तो आपकी पहली शो कर रहे हैं, पर एक और चीज़ भी है कोलैबोरेशन की. जब हम बाहर जाते हैं, और मेरा क्योंकि 3-4 बार ऐसे एक हसीन इत्तफाक हुआ, sitting at certain embassies in Europe, when I asked them about what do you know about the tech sector of Pakistan, and there were instances where there was a deputy ambassador, and in certain instances there was a commercial attaché, and they were clueless. And human capital के ऊपर they had little information, but more on के हमने आम बेचने हैं, हमने किन्नू बेचने, जो कि important है बेचने, वो भी आप बेचें, टेक्सटाइल बेचने, और उससे connect कर रहे हैं, but not connecting this talent that now you are evangelizing and promoting and connecting. So one very essential part of collaboration that I'm sure you're looking at is that external collaboration, right? So, and I'm just throwing it in, I'm not saying necessarily कि आप इसका जवाब दें या मैं आपको put करूँ उसमें stack में. But what are the challenges you see? Because you have the role of a lot of cross-sectoral collaboration to promote the private, to engage with the government sector, to engage with the foreign embassies, to engage with investors. So, yeah, your take on it.
अच्छा, तीन चार रियलिटीज़ हैं हमें, और वो हमारे खिलाफ कुछ चीज़ें क्रिएट की गई. Unfortunately, that is very competitive of our competitor. Okay, they have painted us as the another Afghanistan. Very successfully. Through the narrative of media. That's what they have painted us. तो अब मैं बाहर से भी काम कर रहा होता हूँ.
If you could keep this solo so that everyone can listen.
Okay. तो मैं बाहर भी काम करता रहा और बाहर भी लोगों का इम्पैक्ट थी. अच्छा, पाकिस्तान में इंटरनेट है? तो आपके यहाँ यूनिवर्सिटीज़ हैं टेक सेक्टर के अंदर? So those are the questions. Now, as far as the collaboration is concerned in that, what we are trying to do, मैं आके जब पाकिस्तान आया, मैं जाके चेक किया पाकिस्तान IT industry on YouTube. Turned out there were 2 documentaries about Pakistan IT industry. उसमें एक PSEB की थी, एक पता नहीं किसी गरीब ने बनाई थी. बाकी the rest were actually news items कि आज वज़ीर साहब फला जगह गए और आज उस्मान साहब फला जगह गए and this and that. तो we asked यार कितने में एक 5, 6, 7 मिनट की डॉक्यूमेंट्री कितने में बन जाती है? फाउंड आउट की 2 मिलियन रुपीज़ में मिल जाती है. अच्छा, वो बड़ा टेम्पटिंग था कि हाँ टेंडर दे दें और 5-6 और बनवा लें. That's okay, let's do something smart here. So what we did, we talked to the team, okay, how about we do a vlogging contest on a 5-minute documentary. So the idea was that if we can then have up to 30 such videos showing up onto whenever somebody looks for Pakistan IT industry, or 40 such videos showing up, that will probably convince them कि हाँ इसमें कुछ काम हो रहा है. और बड़ा सिंपल सा हम उसमें आइडिया था, हमने कहा कि जी जो कंपनीज आके इसमें जो व्लॉगर्स जो बच्चे आके इसमें कॉन्टेस्ट में हिस्सा लेंगे, 70% मार्क्स विल बी ऑन व्यूज़ एंड लाइक्स. और हमने वो पैरामीटर डिफाइन कर दिए, ये 6 हैं, आप उसको वायरल कर दो, 70% मार्क्स ऑन दैट. जो टॉप 10 उसमें से उन व्यूज़ और लाइक्स में को ऐड करके जो टॉप 10 वीडियोज़ आएंगी उनको हम जजेस एक्लेमेशन के लिए डाल देंगे, और उसमें जो पॉइंट्स मिलेंगे वो जो फाइनल पॉइंट्स होंगे, और जो टॉप 5 होंगी डॉक्यूमेंट्रीज उनको PSCB ओन करेगा एज PSCB's ओन डॉक्यूमेंट्रीज, एंड वी गिव देम द कैश अवार्ड एज वेल.
Excellent.
तो एक ये छोटा सा मत, दैट्स व्हाट वी थॉट कि यार दैट्स हाउ वी कैन मेक इट राइट. सिमिलरली जो आप इंटरनेशनल कोलैबोरेशन की बात करें, इंटरनेशनल कोलैबोरेशन में इस साल के शुरू से मेरे आने से पहले there was a program, very new program was led by our Secretary IT, कि जितने भी पाकिस्तानी ट्रेड काउंसलर्स हैं जो बाहर जा रहे हैं उनको हम IT में ट्रेन करके भेजें. उसका फ़ायदा ये हुआ कि हमने PSCB ने मेरे आने से पहले ये काम हुआ, previous directors did that wonderful job actually. उसका फ़ायदा ये हुआ कि जो करिकुलम हमने उनको बना के भेजा, और PTAB जो इनका जो TDAB का जो प्रोग्राम है उसमें उन्होंने ट्रेन किया. मार्च ऑनवर्ड्स अप टिल नाउ हम कोई 27 मीटिंग्स कर चुके हैं विद आवर ट्रेड काउंसलर्स अब्रॉड जूम के ऊपर, जिसमें अब हम टियर 2 पे आ चुके हैं या लेग 2 पे आ चुके हैं, जहाँ पे हम B2B मैचअप्स करा रहे हैं. फॉर इंस्टेंस हम ऑस्ट्रेलिया के साथ हम लेग 3 पे आ चुके हैं, जहाँ पे नेक्स्ट 6 तारीख को हमारा उनके साथ है, जहाँ पे वो 43 ऑस्ट्रेलियन कंपनीज को लेके आ गए. दे वांट टू टॉक टू 78 पाकिस्तानी कंपनीज. तो ये इंटरनेशनल कोलैबोरेशन ऑफ कोविड हैज़ प्रॉब्ली बिकम ए इन्फोर्सर कि लोग पाकिस्तान आ नहीं पाते थे, तो अब ये एक इन्फोर्सर है कि हम बड़े आराम से उनको अपने टैलेंट से अपनी कंपनी से हम उनको इंटरफेस करा सकते हैं.
Excellent. Such great examples of collaboration and creatively thinking out of the box. So which brings me to you, Fatima, and this is my last question to the panelists, and then we'll have questions from this wonderful audience as well. So
Save the best for last.
Save the best for the last, right? So culture plays a very important role, right? And whatever strategy you want to create, whatever degree of innovative freedom you want amongst the intrapreneurs, even if you know, encouraging as you're expanding and there are hierarchies, but you want to encourage intrapreneurs within the organization, it's the culture actually that matters. Culture शुरू में different होता है, and then you create and you move on. इसमें भी collaboration का भी role है, change management का भी role है. You've been part of organizations which started from a few members, grew to several hundred or thousand people, right? The same is the case with the last recent 2 assignments at least. And you've been part from the day when the culture was being shared, this is the vision, and these are the values, and then that being executed and still being there. What do you think are those most important elements to sustain, retain कि ये हमारा culture है और ये throughout ऐसे रहेगा despite how much you grow, wherever you grow?
So this is a topic that I talk about very loudly all the time. So first, talk about culture fit. One of the first things I did, and my team is here and they can tell you, is I took out a culture fit interview from the interview process because I think that is not the right thing to do. So culture fit is not something that we should be looking at. You talked about diversity. I just want to talk about how we're focused on diversity. It's really hard for us here because we work at night, but it's a topic close to my heart. Now talking about culture, I think culture is a buzzword used by a lot of tech companies or these upcoming companies, and they say they want to live the values, they want to breathe the values, and they want to keep the culture. First of all, culture should be evolving. You can't have the same culture you had when there were 5 people. It was a lot more transparent, there was a lot of things that you could share. But as the company grows and hierarchy will come, culture has to evolve. If you're not evolving your culture, if you're not evolving your values, you're doing something really wrong. And I think if you want the culture to stay and the values to actually resonate, you need to have an exec team or a management team that's living, breathing, exercising, sleeping the values. You cannot expect every single person in the organization to follow a culture or the values that the management team does. And so the responsibility actually lies with them to make sure that they're living it. I'm not saying kya kuch kare, I'm saying just live the values. Actually, if you're saying that we want to be a transparent organization, start being transparent yourself. If you're saying you want to be bold and you want to be agile, be that yourself. So I think it's a simple answer to, one, you should always be evolving, reassessing, and not year by year. You should look at the different stages. You have like the early stage startup, you have like the relatively small startup, and then there is that moment where culture starts to break down, and that's when you have enough money as a startup to bring in the big guns. So you bring in all these people from big companies that will come in with a little bit of their own culture, and they'll try to bring in that culture where they're coming from. That's when the clash really happens. And that's when you need to have founders step in and say, this is the culture, you need to evolve. So I think there's no rocket science to it. I think it's one of those things where cultures become a buzzword. I just think we should focus on values, and those values, it's easier to say that we have these values and we'll stick to these values than culture, because everyone brings a part of themselves. And you want to bring the best people. So like in a tech company, you want to pick up somebody from Facebook, you want to pick up somebody from Google, you want to pick up somebody from Apple, Uber now, Kareem, and they'll bring in their own culture. So I think what you can resonate on is values, and that will only happen if the people that we look on to lead us will be living, breathing, sleeping, exercising values.
So leadership by example. Thank you. Thank you, Fatima. So this is from our side. Let's hear any questions that the audience may have. Ji, please. Can we give them a mic? Please, your name and your organization.
Assalamu alaikum, first of all, panelists. My name is Amar Alvi, and I'm from the CxO Forum, and I'm a part of this team. Basically, we talked about diversity, we talked about making processes very easy to people, we talked about everything. But what I was thinking that हम सारी बातें ये internally कर रहे हैं regarding organizations. To have a good team, to have a good management, yes, we can excel in an organization. We can collaborate with internal organization, we can collaborate, yes, with the international organization to work on digitalization in Pakistan. But the thing is, there's always a portion. कुछ लोग होते हैं जो पाकिस्तान में, even if I talk about Kareem, कुछ लोग होते हैं जो negative comments डालते हैं. We call them layman. कुछ लोग होते हैं SECB के फॉर्म के ऊपर जाते हैं और वहाँ पे कंपनी रजिस्टर करते हुए बोलते हैं नहीं यार, या तो बहुत सारी इन्फॉर्मेशन मांग रहा है, हमसे सॉल्व नहीं हो पाएगा. कुछ लोग होते हैं जो बोलते हैं कि यार कोई ऐप आ गई है हमारे पास, yes we can work on it, but there are some negative critics about that application. So I want to ask the question that हम organizations और multinational companies के तो बहुत कुछ कर रहे हैं, but digitalization को sustain करने के लिए why aren't we working to involve these layman people to involve in our digitalization work and work with us? Yes, sir, आपने भी mention किया था about that video and then likes and all those percentages, उसके basis के ऊपर आपने contest वगैरह किया था. पाकिस्तान के एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप के बहुत सारे कॉन्टेस्ट होते हैं. एक आइडिया करोड़ों का भी चल रहा होता है, नबील कदीर साहब का. PPIT भी जो है इसके ऊपर काम कर रही होती है काफ़ी हद तक. प्लान 9 भी काम कर रही है, BIC भी काम कर रही है, बहुत सारे इंक्यूबेशन सेंटर्स काम कर रहे हैं. बट व्हाट एक्चुअल आउटकम वी आर हैविंग इट, हम लोग तो लेमैन को इन्वॉल्व भी नहीं कर रहे. वी आर जस्ट टॉकिंग, हम ऊपर की क्रीम को ले रहे हैं. मैं समझता हूँ टेक्नोलॉजी उस वक्त सस्टेन नहीं कर सकती जब तक हम लोग लेमैन के अप्रोच पे ना जाए. So, are there any plans for it कि हम उसके ऊपर काम कर सकें?
किसकी तरफ directed है?
ये मेरा question basically आप सबसे है.
Okay. So Mehta, if I can summarize it, कि how can all this go to a grassroots level, right?
अच्छा, ये this is very close to my heart. हमने काम जब शुरू किया, I looked at Karachi, Lahore, Islamabad, to some extent शायद Hindi and a bit of Faisalabad. I thought ये Karachi, Lahore, Islamabad cannot sustain our growth, our export growth. We are envisioning 5 billion, 10 billion and eventually 20 billion to have some size eventually. And I know for a fact that there is a lot of work going on in Hyderabad, there's a lot of work going on in Sialkot, there's a lot of work going on in Gujranwala. And So what we came up with, we have right now 14 software technology parks across the country. Our vision is now to increase that to 55 over the next 24 months. And I'm not about brick and mortar activities. I'm a technology software guy. I try and stay far away from that. But what we have is, when we collaborated with KPIT board, we are talking to the Sindh IT ministry as well. What we are asking them, if you have any government building, if you have any government facility which is underutilized, unutilized, or even a failed facility, how about you convert it into a usable space, and we come in and we technologically enable it, and then we name it a software technology park for that area. Let's suppose what would happen. What would happen in Nawab Shah if we never do anything? Nothing will happen, because 10 घंटे लाइट नहीं है, इंटरनेट स्टेबल नहीं है, कस्टमर के पास पैसे नहीं है, तो इंटरनेट कंपनी वहाँ जाना नहीं चाहती, बिजली के लोगों की ज़रूरत नहीं है, लोग they learn to live with it. But what if we can give them a space of 20,000 square feet or 15,000 square feet, and we make it look like this, and we tell them कि यार ये 24 घंटे अवेलेबल है, जब चाहो जाओ यहाँ पे जाके काम करो. What will happen is 20,000 square feet means some 200 odd people in simultaneously. 3 शिफ्टों में हमारे पास 600 लोग होंगे. And if they are freelancers, if they are somebody who can self-teach themselves Python or Node.js, we are looking at a resource who can easily earn $1,000. And if we allow them to stay where they are, we allow them to stay in Larkana, we allow them to stay in Kohat, instead of having to come to Islamabad from Kohat and pay 35,000 rupees to rent wale ghar ke andar to earn 18,000 rupees. This is where we are missing out greatly. If we let them be there, we let their dollars come into that ecosystem, we let their dollars come into that economy, I think we would probably be able to do much more with very less intervention, with very less tenders and very less, नई building बना दो और नया, budget खड़ा कर दो और पैसे बना लो उसमें. So we'll probably be able to do much more in that fashion.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Anyone like to add to it? Okay.
Would you like to hear more about it? Or?
Is it enough? We can take more details actually offline.
I said it's very close to my heart.
I want to encourage more people to ask questions. Ji, please. या तो आप आगे आ जाइए, थोड़ा सा बुलंद आवाज में अपना नाम. हाँ, चलिए. Thank you.
My name is Mazhar. I'm part of an early stage founding team. I'm part of the founding team of an early stage startup, 10th Wheel. I have a question for you, Fatima. You talked about culture fit. You mentioned that this should not be part of the interview process. Does that mean that it should not be part of the entire recruitment process? If so, what is the reason for that? I'm trying to understand why you're excluding that from the process.
I think it's a really good question. It should be out of the whole recruitment process as such, because culture is not something that you can boil down to a science. And that gives room to people to use that as a, not weapon, I don't want to go as far as weapon, but it gives you a reason to be biased against somebody. Say you interview somebody, and what the inherent thing when we're interviewing people is we're looking for people like ourselves to hire. And so if you meet somebody who's not like yourself, and you're doing a one-on-one interview, and you're saying it's a culture fit interview, you might think, we don't see eye to eye, this person's good, or it could not be a culture fit. So there's a lot of evidence. There was some literature out of, I think Harvard or MIT, I should know this, but actually discouraging culture fit interviews because it's now become a way to block diverse hires from happening. So there's other things that you can test on. If you, as an early stage startup, have values, then you can have a value-based questions. Those are really easy. So if you say transparency is one of our value, you can mold a question in which you can test if they're transparent, if they're integral, if they're agile. But I definitely discourage culture fit as a thing, because you will start seeing, if you have culture fit as part of your recruitment process, you will see less and less diversity, because the person who is doing it, there's something called unconscious bias, which makes you want to hire the same person as you. It's not even conscious. So look for values and then put together value-based questions and then hire based on that, and completely take out culture fit from your recruitment process.
Thank you, Fatima. I believe this is very good because it's detrimental for growth of an organization if everyone thinks alike. Yeah. You can't challenge anyone. There has to be that yin and yang. So yeah, G. Let's take one more question. I have
two questions from Mr. Osman. Sorry, I think a lot of areas concerned with the government, and that's why some people think that you are the trap there. So,
can you also share your name?
Sorry. So my name is Salim. I work for an authentication services startup, Identification, and we work in several markets, including just recently launched in Pakistan. So the first question is more of a cliche, I would say, because a lot of people ask, I'm sure they would ask this question from you, that there is a very big freelance market. Pakistan is the 4th largest freelance talent provider, whereas when you look at the IT exports, the numbers are probably 1/5, if I remember correctly, or well, at least less than half. It shows that probably there is a lot of informal sector as well, which is not included in Upwork and etc. big sites. So I think the number multiplies more. What do you think is missing that we are unable to channelize? That's my view. The talent that could bundle things together and sell it for, let's say, $10,000, but he's selling his talent for $50. So what exactly would that be? That's one question. But okay, if you want to answer first, and then I'll ask. The second question is that very recently the minister also announced that Pakistan is going to do $5 billion exports by 2023, which means roughly 5 times in the next 3 years. Whereas I'll just share a very small incident that happened with me. I was sitting with somebody, and there was a tax man sitting with us, a common friend, and he started to ask about how digital services work, etc. So I kept explaining to him, and he called me in his office next morning. I went to his office, and he said, "यार मेरा एक काम कर दो." मैंने कहा जी क्या करना है? He said कि ये list है, and he had literally more than 100 URLs, Urdu point. And Daraz.pk and all types of digital. He said कि मुझे ये बताओ इनको टैक्स कैसे करना है। अब वो एक तो ये टैक्स मैन है, दूसरी तरफ अगर आप आए रेगुलेशंस के ऊपर, पाकिस्तान के अंदर अभी क्लाउड सर्विसेज, अभी अमेजोन ने भी कुछ जॉब्स एडवर्टाइज की, तो पता चला कि जी अमेजोन आ रहा है पाकिस्तान में बड़ा ओपनली। अब वो हर तरफ ये शोर पड़ रहा है जी कि क्लाउड सर्विसेज को टैक्स कैसे करना है। यही एक इंसिडेंस टेलीकॉम सेक्टर में हुआ आज से 3-4 साल पहले। आई वॉज इन टेलीकॉम सेक्टर फॉर मोस्ट ऑफ माई कैरियर, सो आई नो दैट। इन्होंने कहा जी कि हैंडसेट्स चोरी होते हैं, इसलिए एक सेंट्रलाइज सिस्टम बना देते हैं कि जहाँ पे ये हैंडसेट्स को रजिस्टर कर सकें। इट वॉज कॉल्ड डर्ब्स। डर्ब्स बना, 1 साल के बाद वो FBI के पास चला गया। अब आप आगे सोच सकते हैं क्या हुआ। ठीक है, पाकिस्तान की अभी इम्पोर्ट बिल बहुत बड़ा है मोबाइल हैंडसेट्स का, but that doesn't imply that we are not sort of creating friction in the growth of digital services. So
अच्छा, इसमें मैं आखिरी सवाल का पहले जवाब दे दूँ। अच्छा, टैक्स वालों से मेरी काफ़ी लड़ाई चल रही है, और नॉट इन अ बैड वे। वी आर ट्राइंग टू हेल्प देम अंडरस्टैंड व्हाट्स व्हाट। हम अभी एक मेजर उनकी एक मीटिंग होती है तमाम रेवेन्यू बोर्ड्स की, वहाँ गए, वहाँ पे एक सवाल पूछा, मैंने कहा यार ये क्या मतलब हुआ, जो है अपने घर में बैठे हुए आपने कंप्यूटर पर उठे और कुछ बटन दबाए और कहते हैं कि एक्सपोर्ट कर दो, ये क्या, ऐसे कैसे एक्सपोर्ट होती है? And the question was very loaded because the question meant to say कि आप ये जो पैसे हैं जो ये IT कंपनीज लेके आ रही हैं ये शायद कुछ 2 नंबर ही है और ये आप उसको कवर देते हैं by export. Because export attracts 0% tax, export attract 100% repatriation of profits and so on and so forth. So I asked them a question out there on मैं कैसा इसका मतलब है कि हम एक काम करते हैं. I agree with your concern. और आज से उन्होंने कहा आप मुझे बता दें कि एक्सपोर्ट की डेफिनेशन क्या होती है. तो कहते हैं कि एक्सपोर्ट की डेफिनेशन ये होती है कि आपकी कंपनी को एक वर्क ऑर्डर आए, आपका बंदा यहाँ से उठे जहाज़ में बैठे दुबई जाए, वहाँ जाके सर्विस डिलीवर करे और सर्विस डिलीवर करके वापस आए, उसके बाद जी उसके बाद उसको आपको इनवॉइस आया पैसे मिले. मैं कहा सर ये तो आपकी डेफिनेशन हम आपसे ले लेते हैं और इसमें करते ये है कि हम टेक्सटाइल एक्सपोर्ट सिर्फ उस टेक्सटाइल एक्सपोर्ट को मानेंगे कि जिसकी फैक्ट्री ढाका में लगी हुई है, जिस पाकिस्तानी कंपनी की फैक्ट्री ढाका में लगी है और ढाका से एक्सपोर्ट करते हैं. नहीं सर आप एप्पल और ऑरेंजेस को मिक्स कर रहे हैं. मैंने कहा सर आप यू नॉट गेटिंग द पॉइंट. हम दिस इज़ हाउ IT एक्सपोर्ट्स आर वर्किंग, दिस इज़ हाउ दे विल कंटिन्यू टू वर्क रिगार्डलेस यू बी एबल टू टैक्स देम और नॉट. डेफिनेशंस के मसाइल हैं, आपके उन सवालों पर मैं आवाज़ हूँ. डेफिनेशंस के मसाइल हैं, दे डोंट अंडरस्टैंड द डेफिनेशन की व्हाट इज़ IT इनेबल्ड सर्विस. डेफिनेशंस हमारे मुल्क में सारे सूबों की, जब से हम पावर डेवोल्यूशन रिवॉल्व हुई है, सारे सूबों की डेफिनेशंस अलग हैं टैक्स की. तो हो सकता है कि आप एक सूबे में काम कर रहे हैं, आपको वहाँ से टैक्स नोटिस ना आए और वो उनकी डेफिनेशन के हिसाब से आप ठीक है, लेकिन दूसरे सूबे से आपको 2 करोड़ रुपए का नोटिस आ सकता है विद दी कंसर्न कि आपकी कंपनी के ऑपरेशन वहाँ सील कर दिए जाएंगे, आपका काम सील कर दिया जाएगा, सो ऑन सो फोर्थ. तो PSCB का काम ये है कि हम जाके इन तमाम इदारों के दरमियान में हम हार्मोनाइजेशन कर रहे हैं कि टैक्स के रेट की हार्मोनाइजेशन कर दें, टैक्स के डेफिनेशन की हार्मोनाइजेशन कर दें. और उसका सबसे बड़ा फ़ायदा ये होगा कि जिन कंपनीज़ को हम बाहर से लेके आना चाहते हैं टू अडॉप्ट पाकिस्तान एज एन एक्सेलेंट सेंटर, टू अडॉप्ट पाकिस्तान एज ए बैक ऑफिस, वो उन कंपनीज़ को बाहर से आके ये कंसर्न नहीं होगा कि हमें टैक्स का नोटिस आ जाएगा, हमें एक्साइज वाला तंग करने आ रहा होगा, हमें डिसेबिलिटी वाले तंग करने आ. अनफॉर्चुनेटली हमारा एक ये भी मामला है, मेरा एक दोस्त डिसेबल है, कैनॉट सी. उस बेचारे को जब गवर्नमेंट की नौकरी की बात आती है ना तो वो इतने मुश्किलों में उसको फंसा देते हैं कि उसको आज तक नौकरी नहीं मिली. लेकिन आपने अगर कंपनी खोल ली है कराची में तो आपके यहाँ डिसेबिलिटी एक्ट वाले साहब आएंगे और कहेंगे कि अच्छा जी 100 बंदे हैं आपके पास, तो जी इसका मतलब है कि आपके पास तो 2 डिसेबल लोग होने चाहिए, कहाँ हैं? और अगर नहीं है तो हम आपकी कंपनी सील कर रहे हैं, अकाउंट सील कर रहे हैं, जुर्माना डाल रहे हैं और डिसेबिलिटी. तो एक दूसरा एक इस ट्रैक पे काम हो रहा है कि इन सारी पावर्स को कुछ हद तक हम कोशिश करें कि कर्व करें IT सेक्टर के लिए, खासतौर पर एटलीस्ट जिस सेक्टर के लिए मैं काम कर सकता हूँ उस सेक्टर के लिए करें. तो हम उन एक्टिविटीज़ पे काम कर रहे हैं. दूसरा आपने सवाल पूछा था कि ये 1 बिलियन से 5 बिलियन कैसे जाएगी इसमें, और जो आपका इनफॉर्मल सेक्टर है उसको आप कैसे इनेबल करें. सो वी आर वर्किंग ऑन अ ट्रैक कि जहाँ पे हम फ्रीलांसर्स को रिकगनाइज करें, फ्रीलांसर्स को एज फ्रीलांसर्स हम रजिस्टर करें अपने पास, और उनको जो स्टेट बैंक से बाकी इदारों से उनको जो आसानियाँ मिल सकती हैं उनको आसानियाँ दिलवाएँ. कुछ चीज़ें हमने विन कर ली हैं. फॉर इंस्टेंस अभी क्या था कि फ्रीलांसर्स अपने अकाउंट के अंदर $5,000 से ज़्यादा नहीं ला सकता. सो वी वर्क विद द इंडस्ट्री, वी वर्क विद स्टेट बैंक. स्टेट बैंक इज एब्सोल्युटली ए वेरी हेल्पफुल ऑर्गेनाइजेशन. उन्होंने उस लिमिट को हमारे साथ काफ़ी डेलिब्रेट किया, उन्होंने उसके ऊपर सारे प्रोज एंड कॉन्स बनाए. इवेंचुअली दे इंक्रीज दैट लिमिट टू 25,000. अच्छा, हम पॉलिसी मेकिंग के उनके अंदर है. मेरा ख्याल ये है कि बजाय इसके कि महंगे प्रोजेक्ट्स करने के सबसे इम्पॉर्टेंट काम ये है कि हम पॉलिसी इनिशिएटिव्स पे और पॉलिसी इनिशिएटिव को ट्रिगर करने पे काम करें. अभी एक हमारे पास एक छोटी सी चीज़ आई कि जी पाकिस्तानी कंपनीज जो हैं वो इंटरनेशनल कंपनी अगर उसमें इक्विटी होल्ड करेगा तो कितना % कर सकता है या नहीं कर सकता है. सो 2-3 चीज़ें बड़े मज़े की थी उसमें था कि जी ये ड्राफ्ट आया, पॉलिसी ड्राफ्ट, कि जी आप 1 साल में मार्केटिंग, HR और किराए के मद में $30,000 से बाहर नहीं बेच सकते. I said, that's $2,500 a month. That's impossible to achieve. इसी तरह मैंने कहा कि जी आप किसी ऐसी कंपनी को नहीं एक्वायर कर सकते जिसने पिछले 3 साल में कभी लॉस किया हो. Well, I'm intentionally buying a sick unit to try and turn it around. तीसरा था कि जी आप जिस बिजनेस में हैं उस बिजनेस के अलावा किसी दूसरी तरह की बिजनेस की कंपनी को और नहीं कर सकते. I'm trying to diversify. So these are very, so we send them those comments and they are now working on it. इसी तरह हम 35 ट्रैक पे काम कर रहे थे, हम उसमें से 6 ट्रैक्स विन करने में कामयाब हो गए, बाकी 29 में से 7 are right now under consideration and we'll try and bring it down to 0. अच्छा, बाकी आपका और बाकी कैसा होता है? आई फॉरगॉट कुछ आंसर कर दिया मैंने?
एक क्वेश्चन मेरा था कि आपके जो फ्रीलांसर्स हैं
जी,
इसकी मार्केट ऑलरेडी बहुत बड़ी है
जी,
बट सिर्फ फॉर्मल सॉफ्टवेयर
अपसेलिंग के लिए, अपसेलिंग स्किल्स के वो 10,000 का अगर रेवेन्यू है तो वो 1 लाख.
ठीक. अच्छा, हम इसमें अभी हमने ये जो प्रोसेस मैंने आपको सॉफ्टवेयर टेक्नोलॉजी पार्क्स वाला बताया, 40 सॉफ्टवेयर टेक्नोलॉजी पार्क्स वाला बताया. आइडिया यही है कि हम फ्रीलांसर्स को वो स्पेस हम अलाउ करें कि दे कैन गो इन एज फ्लोटिंग डेस्क वहाँ पे और वहाँ से बैठ के वो काम करना शुरू करें. नंबर 1. नंबर 2, हम उनकी अपस्किलिंग करते रहें कि हमारे पास जो पहले PSCB के कुछ प्रोग्राम्स होते थे, हम लोकल कंपनीज को उसमें इन्वॉल्व करते थे और उनसे कहते थे कि जी अब आप प्रिंसिपल से जो है वो सर्टिफिकेशन कोर्सेज करा लें और हम X% बच्चों को सर्टिफिकेशन कोर्सेज दे दें. When I came in, we started talking to the principals directly. We started talking to IBM, we started talking to Huawei, we started talking to others. कुछ और से Teradata as well. और for one company, IBM told me, Osman, हम तो जो है वो free trainings हाथ में लिए घूम रहे, कोई हमसे ले. I said, how many? कहते there is no limit on numbers. The program is online. Just partner with us. So what we are now doing is we are partnering with principal companies directly. और principal companies से direct partner करने के साथ हम जो चीज़ें हैं उनसे हमें फ्री मिल सकती है वो हम फ्री ले लें. और हमने साथ में यूनिवर्सिटीज़ को पार्टनर किया. पहले स्टेज में यूनिवर्सिटीज़ के टीचर को ट्रेन कर रहे हैं कि बेचारे यूनिवर्सिटी के कराची में यूनिवर्सिटी उसके बच्चों उसके टीचर्स के पास कोई इंसेंटिव नहीं है कि मैं क्यों क्लाउड सीखूँ. मैं अच्छा खासा सब कुछ मैं पढ़ा रहा हूँ, मैं जो मेरी तनख्वाह मिलती है उसमें मेरे टाइम गुजर रहा है, मैं कॉपियाँ चेक करता हूँ, मार्क कर देता हूँ. दैट पर्सन प्रॉब्ली नेवर बी एबल टू हेल्प अगेन अंडरस्टैंड डिजिटल ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन. या जो डेफिनेशन वो देगा वो मेरे ख्याल से किसी काम की नहीं होगी. सो इफ वी कन्वर्ट दैट जेंटलमैन into an AWS resource, into a GCP resource, into a cloud resource per se, तो his understanding would probably go to a level कि जहाँ पे वो उन बच्चों को ज़्यादा बेहतर ट्रेन करने में कामयाब हो जाएगा. और वो जो कंसर्न्स है उसके वो दूर हो जाएंगे. तो हम पहले स्टेज में यहाँ पे काम कर रहे हैं. दूसरे स्टेज में हम काम कर रहे हैं कि जी हम यूनिवर्सिटीज़ के साथ मिलके बाकी ट्रेनिंग उनके लोकेशंस को यूज़ करें, उनके ट्रेंड रिसोर्सेज को यूज़ करें और फिर बाकी अपने सॉफ्टवेयर टेक्नोलॉजी पार्क्स को अपनी कंपनीज को दोबारा ट्रेन करें, अपने फ्रीलांसर्स को ट्रेन करें. तो ये सारे प्रोसेस हैं. इसमें हमारी कोशिश है कि हमारा स्किल सेट, हमारा रिसोर्स की कैपेबिलिटी बेहतर हो, हमारे रिसोर्स की टेक्निकल अंडरस्टैंडिंग बेहतर हो, तो हम ज़्यादा पैसे उनके थ्रू कमा सकते हैं.
Thank you so much. That's a wrap from our side. Thank you. मेरे ख्याल में we had this refreshments here as well for you to enjoy, but also to meet and to ask more questions, to get to know each other well. Thank you so much for being such a patient audience and also very engaging questions. And thank you to these wonderful, learned people that are always here sharing, their experiences and being very candid and open. Thank you. All.